All right, so this is the video for the trendy project in the APIs assignment. And so I've opened up the APIs assignment, and if you get this where it says trendies.rmd, that brings up the notebook, and it is trendy with two Y's. That's not a typo. There must have been another package called trendy with one Y that got there first. But there's a new package for this trendy and a new one called Lubridate that works on dates and times. And I say here the theory is that when what people search for, like Google searches, it reveals their interest in a way that might be more honest than a survey. And if you haven't seen Google Trends, you can go, well, like you might go to Google, and one thing that's kind of fun to do is if you type in something like how do I, and then see what these are the most common things that people have looked for. Or there's some really funny ones you can see, or like should I get bangs, or like you can kind of how do I get my girlfriend to love me, or how do I get my girl pregnant, how do I get my girlfriend to shut up, or then you could look at boyfriend. And then this kind of just gives you a sense of what people are searching for on Google. It'll try to auto-populate it with common things. How do I get my boyfriend to stop snoring? Well, you can do this in a more formalized way if you go to this trends.google.com, and then you can see what people are searching on, and you can get like maps, and you can get trends over time. So like it's kind of late January 2020 when I'm making this video, so the Super Bowl's coming up. So if I look up Super Bowl, you can kind of see there's a surge in, this is 2019, so this was last year about the time of the Super Bowl. There was kind of a surge in interest. People were typing Super Bowl into Google to see when it was or what the score was or whatever. And then, of course, after it's over, it kind of dies down again. And you can set all kinds of things. You can look outside of the US. You could set, let's say, past 5 years. And you can see, right around the time the Super Bowl happens, there's a spike in searches for that word. And so the idea is that we're going to use this trendy package to bring in this kind of Google Trend search data into R, and then analyze it ourselves, and instead of having to rely on Google's interface to it. So I'm going to go ahead and load those packages. You might get a message that says that the package is not installed. There might be a little banner that appears up here, and you can just click install to install Trendy or one of the other packages. Now the package is called Trendy with two Y's. The basic command is Trendy with one Y. And so what I'm going to do is, to match what we did with the page views package, I'm going to want to see how people are searching for the word flu. And so put that into a data frame called flu, and then I'm going to look at this get interest, which is kind of like this trend line here, and then glimpse it. So let's do that. And it'll take a minute to pull in the searches, and then I don't know, it always seems to say failed to create connection, but it seems to get the data anyway, so I'm not sure what that error message is. But you can see it's got a date, and when you look at it, we'll see that it does a new search once a week. So like February 1st, 2015, February 8th, 2015, February 15th, etc. And then hits is the number of searches that have occurred. And it doesn't give you, Google Trends does not give you the raw number of searches. Like it won't say, there were 1.8 million searches or something like that. It instead gives you kind of a standardized set of numbers from 0 to 100. And so 100 will be like the peak day, and 0 will be the lowest day of searches. And it's searching for flu every day, and it tells you some more stuff there. So what we can do is take that, so I put that into a data frame called flu, and I'm gonna extract the get interest. You need that command to tell it that you're not looking at regions of the world or anything like that. You're just looking at the hits basically, and then sending it to a data table. And then you can see, so there's the date, February 25th, or sorry, January 25th, February 1st, February 8th, hits, etc. And we can even look and see, like you could sort by hits and see there's the 100, that's the highest. And for whatever reason, that was January 28th, 2018 was the highest number of hits over that time period. So we can create a ggplot graph with it. I'm just going to take this flu and then do the get interest on it again, and then send it to a ggplot. And what we're going to do is have the x will be date here. So that'll be the horizontal axis, and then y, the vertical axis, will be hits, which is this column here. And then do a line graph. So let's do that. And there you can see a typical looking ggplot. And then, you can see kind of that seasonality to it. It looks like, where these vertical lines are would be the winter, right December and then January 2017. And that's going to be higher, whereas the dip here will be in the summer, where you'd expect the dip to be. And there's that January 2018. There must have been a big flu season, in that winter of 2017, 2018, that people were searching a lot on it. So it says to improve the graph, use theme minimal, include a title. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this stuff and then paste it down here. And then I'm going to add, so make sure you use our plus sign, and I'm going to do theme minimal. Oops, theme minimal. And another plus sign, and then I'm going to do, let's see, I think it's labs, like labels, title equals, and then I'm going to say Google searches for, and then I'm going to use single quotes for flu. And I think that should do it. Okay, so gets rid of the gray background. I think the white looks a little nicer and puts the title up there. So now I'm going to do something a little bit more complicated. So the problem with this is that it's showing every individual year, and it would be interesting to look at the seasonality of searches for flu by looking at, in general, across the year, so across the winter, summer, fall, etc. Do you see changes in general in searches? And so that's what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to start out with my flu and the get interest, just like we did before, but I'm going to create, so I'm going to use this mutate to create a new column called month. And this month command here is from the Lubridate package. And I'm going to get the month. What this does is it extracts the month from this date column. So we've got the date column here, and you notice it's this funny kind of, it has a time and I don't even know what that Z is there, but what the Lubridate package will do is read this and figure out what the month is. So it'll understand that 01, that means it's January. And let's set this back. Yeah, and then 2 are the February searches, and then March are the 3. And it's going to extract that date from it. Where are we here? Then what we're going to do is we're going to group by month. So what that will do is it'll take all of the ones that it sees, meaning January, and group them. It'll put them all together, and all the Februarys, etc. And then you'll often see this combined, where you have a group by and then a summarize. So it's going to group by month, put all the months together, and then get the mean, basically, the number of hits per month. So it's going to take the mean of those hits for each month. And then I'm going to create a data table, and so let's take a look at that. So there you can see across all of the months for all of the years, it was 2015 and on, right? It's gonna where am I here? It's gonna take the mean of all of those Januaries, including there's 4 search weeks during January the Google Trends will give you, and then all the different years. And you can see that I think that January was the highest. And I can sort by hits per month. Yeah, and February is the second highest, December, so it makes sense. Let's sort this highest at the top. Yeah. So January, then February, then December, October. It's interesting that October was higher than November, but then if you look at the lowest months, it was, July and June and August. Okay. And a couple of other things that I did here, I set a page length of 12. If I don't do that, so let's say if we get rid of this, and then I run that again, what'll happen is a data table, that package will default to 10, and then it's this annoying thing where I've got to go to the next page to get the next 2, which is kind of annoying. So if I set that, let me undo that, set that page length to 12, it's kind of nice because it'll put them all, and then run it again. It'll put all 12 on one. It causes a little bit of a graphic glitch here, but anyway, I think it looks a little better. The other thing I did is I rounded the second column, which is this hits per month, to 2 digits, and that's what that format round 22 does. And so if I delete that and then run it again, you get this ugly thing here. And so I think it looks a little nicer to round it. And you could round it to 1 or 2 digits or whatever. And the format round 22, that's the second column, and that's to 2 digits. So if I rounded it to 1 digit, look like that, right? 40.5. Okay, now instead of sending it to a table, we can send this same thing, but to a graph. So before, when we did the graph, it was across all those years. But what if we just want to look at just individual months and graph that? What we do is basically the same thing. We have the flu, the get interest. We're going to create a new month column. We're going to group by month and then get the mean. And that's all the same as above, but then from here on below is where we're going to do, instead of data table, we're going to do a ggplot. And we're going to remember our new column that we created is called month. And then our new mean is called hits per month here. And so that's the X and the Y. We're going to do a line graph and then create the graph. So that shows you the nice pattern. We're definitely, over the years, we're getting greater searches for the word flu in the winter months than in the summer months down here. One other thing that I did is I did this scale X discrete limits 1 through 12. What that does, and let's delete that. What that'll do is create a number for each month. Actually, now that I think about it, it would look nicer if the months were labeled, but I didn't do that. So, if I run that again, I'll show you if I didn't have that, it would look, this is kind of weird looking, right? Like, what is the 2.5 month or the 5.0 or 7.5? And so it kind of just guesses what the X labels are. And so if you add this back in, limits 1 through 12, it'll just make sure it has each month numbered down there. So that's all that does. Now, the next thing is to look at, instead of different time periods, like different months, we can look at different locations. And so what we do here is we use this trendy command. I'm going to look at flu, and then I'm going to limit my searches to the US only. The other thing I'm going to do here is you can set a from date and a to date. And so if we look from, I just kind of randomly pick these June 2015 to June 2019, and limit it to the US only. And I called it flu US instead of flu. This was this was a worldwide search, so this will be only US. And the reason I wanted to only look at US is because I want to look at the differences between different states. And so if we limit it to the US, we can use this. Remember, before it was get interest. Now it's going to be get interest region. And when you're limited to the US and you look at different regions, it'll give you states. So I'm going to take that flu US, pipe it into get interest region, and then create a data table. And so you can see there's a column called location that just lists all the states. And it says 51. I bet it's the states plus DC. Let's see about that. Yeah, there's District of Columbia was last. So for whatever reason, Alabama had the highest searches for flu. And whereas, you know, the further you go back here, like DC was the last, but Nevada was low, etc. And the other thing we can do is we can do DMA, which stands for designated market area. So I'm going to do flu US. I'm going to pipe that into get interest, but now instead of get interest region down here, I'm going to do get interest DMA. And then let's see, it says get a data table. So I'm going to do data table. Okay, and this DMA stands for designated market area. It's basically either a city or maybe a couple of cities. Like you see this I don't know what this Tri-Cities is, but you know, a lot of states have, you know, a couple of cities or across a state border. You know, Columbus, Tupelo, West Point, you know, or things like that. There's one that's Greenville, Spartanburg, South Carolina, linked with Asheville. It's kind of like one big market. If I look for Billings, I can search in here and you can see, you know, or I don't know if Bozeman or other places. Yeah, you see it puts Butte and Bozeman together. So that's a different way of doing it. Instead of by state, kind of by city or kind of urban area. And you can see there's 210 of those. Okay, the other thing I wanted to do with geography is to look at a different country. And so, you know, I thought I'd choose Australia since it's in the southern hemisphere. And I've heard that the flu seasons are flipped, right? It's kind of the cold months. And so maybe during the US summer, Australia might be having their high flu season and vice versa. So I can do flu, and then this time I'm going to do geo, but instead of just US, I'm going to link or put two of them together with the C command, and then separated by comma, US and AU for Australia, and then the same time period there. And I'm going to call that flu countries and put it into that flu underscore countries data frame. And then it says do another ggplot line graph. And I think, no, let's go ahead and I'll try to do it without copying and pasting. So I'm going to take flu countries, pipe that into, I'm going to do the get interest. And then pipe that into ggplot. And then I'm going to do AES x equals, it says, I'm just kind of reading up here. It says x equals date, y equals hits. And that's what we've done before. What's new is I'm going to do color. So I'm going to do two different lines of two different colors according to the two geos that it has. So it has the US and Australia. So I'm going to add this in, color equals geo. And then make it a line graph. So add another plus and then geom line. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, so there you can see, it's a little hard to tell. There's that big spike. It was in the US, but it looks like, yeah, it looks like they're kind of opposite one another, right? When the US is high, the Australia is low, and vice versa. But what we might do is to get a better picture of this, to see if kind of US and Australia are opposites, it might be easier if we looked just across the months in general instead of separating them, you know, by years, kind of like we did before. And so that's basically what this long code does. So I'm taking flu countries, doing the get interest, creating a new month column, grouping them, taking the mean, etc. But now I'm adding ggplot with the color equals geo, And I'm doing a couple of other things. I'm doing the 1 through 12 here. I'm doing the theme minimal and doing a title. So it kind of does it all for you. But there you can kind of see, if you look at internet searches for flu over time by country, you can see, the highest months in Australia, it looks like it's May. And May, April, May, June, July, and then it's low in December and January, whereas for the US, it's the opposite, right? So it seems to support the idea that the flu seasons are opposite. Okay. Now, another thing we can do, just kind of want to show you a couple things you can do with this trendy package. So here's another thing where you can look for multiple keywords. And so now instead of trendy and then flu, I'm going to, again, whenever you want to combine a couple of variables or a couple of search words, in this case, you can use this C command. And so that's the case here. We're going to combine flu and depression, and we'll limit it to the US. I thought depression might be a good one to look at because that some people say that depression is seasonal. Maybe that people have more depression in the dark, colder months. So I'm going to go ahead and get those. And then while that's working, it says graph it with a line graph. And so I'm going to do flu, depression, and I'm going to do get interest. And then ggplot AES, and I want X is date, Y is hits, and then now the line colors will be, it's called keyword. And so remember, actually, let me do something. I know I don't have it here, but let's go ahead and just take a look at flu, depression. Let's see here. Let's pipe that in to get interest. Get a better look at that. Let's do this. Okay, so there you can see, we have dates, date, we have hits, and then keyword. Now before it was always flu, but if you notice, if we scroll through this a little bit, eventually it'll change. There it changed to depression. So now this keyword, instead of always being flu, it's now a variable, right? So sometimes it's flu and sometimes it's depression. And so when we set the color to this keyword variable here, it will have two different color lines, one for depression and one for flu. And then we're going to do a geom line graph again. Is that all? Yeah, I think that's all I'm asking for. We'll keep it simple. And there, I don't know, you can see that big, huge spike for that flu in that early 2018. And comparatively, it looks like depression is relatively flat compared to that, obvious seasonality to flu searches. But to get a better look at it, we can do what we did before, where we collapse across all the years. So I think what I'm going to do, this is a long one, so I think I'm going to come back up here where we did this Australia one and copy this and just change what I need to change. So it's saying graph it by month. So now we need to change a couple things. We don't want countries, we want flu and depression. Let's see, pipe that to get interest. Okay, so now instead of month and geo, it's going to be month and keyword, right? So now instead of two geographical locations, we have two different keywords. So use group by month and keyword, and then color equals keyword in the plot. So I need to change that. And then let's change this, instead of by country, it's going to be internet searches for flu and depression. Let's say by month. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, and there you can see, there's that same flu graph that we had before, but now you can kind of see maybe a little bit of seasonality with depression searches. I don't know. Kind of seems like March and April are a little higher than like July, maybe. Maybe people aren't searching, are a little happier in the summer, but obviously not nearly as strong as for flu. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you is that you can search for specific Google properties. Google owns Google searches, but it owns things like YouTube as well. And here are some of the things that you can do: Google News and images and stuff like that. I'm not sure what this Frugal is. I think it's a shopping site. But what I do here is I wanted to look at for depression videos. So the search I'm doing is how to treat depression. So how often do people type that in to YouTube? And it seems like a little bit of an odd place to search for depression treatments, but maybe people are looking at YouTube for free videos on how to treat their depression. So by doing gprop, it's like a property, right? Google property, and we're going to limit it to YouTube. And then we can, I'm kind of doing a little bit of a shortcut here. I'm just doing those, that same grouping by month, but now on the depression videos. So let's see what that looks like. Now here you actually do see, I think, well, I don't know, it's a little messy, but you see maybe a little bit of seasonality where you're seeing high searches for depression, for how to treat depression in like February and March, and then in, October, and maybe a little lower in the summer, in May, so maybe a little bit of seasonality there for YouTube searches. Okay, so that's the run through of that kind of practice assignment. Now for your assignment that you publish on our pubs, I want you to basically do this but with psychologists. And you can look at it over time, look at monthly interest in it, and do some of the things that we did above. And then comparing, I thought maybe compare US and Canada. Okay, that's it.